Hello everyone and welcome back to the video. In today's video, we're going to be taking a look at which characters have been the most successful throughout the history of Smash Ultimate. So what we have right here is a list that was made by EAZYFREEZIE. Go follow him. His stuff will be down below and he makes a lot of really good stuff, so I'd highly recommend you check him out. But what he's done is he's taken all the characters that have won a C tier tournament and higher throughout the history of Smash Ultimate and compiled it all into one list to see which character has the most wins. As you can see right here, we have the specific numbers of it all. And what he's also done is he's taken the results from 2019 and 2020 and 2021 and 2022. So we're going to be looking at which characters have been the most successful throughout the history of the game, which characters haven't been doing too well, and the differences between the 2019-2020 meta and the 2021-22 meta. Now for a remainder of this video, we're going to be looking at the sheet that shows us the exact numbers and the amount of wins that the characters actually have, but again, everything will be down below, so you want to take a look at this tier list in a little bit more detail. I highly implore you to, because it is really cool and you get to see some of the tier gaps between characters, and it's also fairly interesting how a good character doesn't necessarily mean a character that's going to have a lot of success, and it does correlate sometimes. Like you look at the 0% here, most of these characters are pretty bad, but even when you start getting a little bit higher, there's some characters that it's pretty weird that they're this high, especially considering that they haven't been played in so long. And we'll start on the right side of this list. And as you can see, there's a lot of characters that haven't gotten a dub yet. The only ones that should be moved out of here are Wii Fit and Pit. They've both gotten their wins recently, so it just hasn't been updated yet. But a lot of these characters, I think, are probably going to stay here for the majority of the game. I can't really see Ganon getting a big win, Kirby, Sword Fighter. While these characters do have some notable reps, they're just kind of held back by the tier that they're in. Like, these characters are extremely bad, very inconsistent. It's going to be incredibly difficult for them to get a dub. I think Donkey Kong getting a win. I could see Belmont's getting a win, but everyone else, I would be pretty shocked if they got a win. Then if you move up here, there's some characters that I would be surprised by if you told me they had a win. Lucario, never in a million years would I have guessed Lucario has a win, but they've done it. Zelda, Villager, there's some characters in here that shouldn't be having success that are still doing okay. Again, it's only one win throughout the entire history of this game, but considering the tier that these characters are in, it's actually not that bad, and there are some very good characters that are down here. I think Mii Brawler is probably the biggest one. I think Mii Brawler at this point is probably like a top 20 character in the game. He is ridiculously good, but people kind of didn't start figuring that out till the later on in the meta, so I imagine we'll see Mii Brawler numbers go up. Same thing with Sora as well. Like, all the DLCs are going to have a little bit less wins just because they came out a little bit later. Ryu essentially wasn't a character until he got his buffs. Like, he was really, really bad, and then he became really good with the buffs, so this doesn't super shock me. I think Link's a character that could go up because, again, I think his ceiling is incredibly high. Same thing with Lucas, to be honest. Corrin's one, especially with Shattuck and Neo being two prodigies that are on the rise. There's a bunch of Sheiks that could do it. The character's just really hard. Ice Climbers as well. We're having an Ice Climbers renaissance right now, so I wouldn't be surprised if another one of those players popped off super hard. And there's some characters that probably won't be getting wins again. Like, I don't see K. Rool having a ton of success. Robin, Ike especially. I think Ike's probably the most notable one here. Not that he's necessarily the worst. People just have kind of figured out how to play around Ike very well. But there's some characters here, like Marth, like Meta Knight, I think most notably. If Leo picks up either of those characters and actually starts trying with them, we could see them getting more wins. But you know what? He said he was going to play Meta Knight as a secondary character and then dropped it like immediately after Summon and went solo Aegis. So the chances of that happening aren't super high. Pichu as well. Though we are still seeing players have some success with Pichu. I'd say the most notable Pichu main was Niatono, and he's kind of switching his focus to Diddy Kong as well. So while there are other Pichus out there that could have success, probably Nate or you being the other one I could think of, and some other ones, of course, the character is probably still going to stay down here in the lower percent. So there's some characters that I definitely think will rise. Again, Brawler is going to rise. Like, I can guarantee that Sora is going to rise. Sheik and Ice Climbers should rise, but everyone else, they might go up by a spot or two, but I wouldn't be surprised if they stayed towards the lower end. And on the other side of the list, for this 0.97 category, I think the only characters I would be shocked by in the current meta are Chrom, Toon Link, and Incineroar, but Incineroar I'm pretty sure is just SkyJ. Maybe there's another person that got a win or two, but SkyJ has been doing so well as of late that I wouldn't be surprised if all of those are just his recent regionals. Toon Link as well has a bunch of reps in Japan especially, and as well in the world as well. You know, you have Marlis, Marco, you have Aang, so the character has representation everywhere, so it does make a little bit of sense. Sephiroth, I'm honestly expected to go way higher just with Tweak and Ken having more success, as well as a couple other good Sephiroths still existing out there. Min Min is definitely going to go up. Surprised he's that low. It's really interesting to see as well that Ken is so much higher than Ryu, and you do have to consider that Ken for a while was much better than Ryu. I think Ryu is better now, but Ken towards the start of the game had way more success, and I'd still say that you have a little bit more Ken reps. Chrom is one that we will probably not see get any more wins. It's not impossible. Good Chrom players exist. He's really strong in the neutral game, but the character's recovery is so so limiting that I find it really hard for him to have success, at least at winning a major. I think he could top 8 a major again, or a C tier ties tournament, but winning it is going to be a whole nother story. I think Shulk and Mario could definitely go up. Pikachu will go up when Shiny Mark just starts going to more things. If ESAM gets his group back, there's a couple other Pikachu players in the world that could have success. Like, that's a character that's probably 100% going to go up in my mind. Next up, you have Terry, and Terry is the most underrated character in this game. Like, he is so good. I hope Riddles is going to be able to show people the light, because I think this character is ridiculous. You have Bayonetta as well with Lima and Bloom Forever, as well as a bunch of other really good Bayonetta players having a lot of success as of late. Yoshi, you have a couple other Yoshi players towards the start of the game, but right now it's essentially just been Yoshidora carrying the character, and to be fair, you only need one guy to carry a character if they're as good as Yoshidora. Cloud is just going to go up because Spargo exists, Diddy Kong, Tweak exists, Mega Man unfortunately is a character that we probably won't see go up too much. I still think they can, especially if Kameme reinvests into the character, but I don't really see that happening. I think Mega Man is still really good, but a lot of people had just dropped him. Unfortunately, Samus will probably go up. Pokemon Trainer, kind of the same thing as Mega Man. Kazuya will go up. Pac-Man will probably go up because of T, but there's other good Pac-Mans out there. I think that off the top of my head, Sinji's very good. I think Tuki is really good. There's a bunch of Pac-Man players out there that just haven't gone to a ton of stuff or haven't quite reached their top potential yet, because Pac-Man is a ridiculous character, so I can see him going higher. A character that I will never see going higher, like I'd be so shocked by, is Inkling. Now, good Inkling reps still do exist. Space still secondary is the character. You have Shiryuki, who's still amazing, so he could definitely get some wins, but I would be surprised if we saw a drastic updraft in Inkling results. Kind of the same thing as Greninja as well. I still think Greninja is a good character, but I definitely think that he is getting a little bit worse and worse as people's punch games are getting that much harder. Next up, we have Luigi, and despite this character actually being pretty mid, I think he actually has a ton of chances of going up, because the amount of insane Luigi reps you have in this game is a lot. You have Luigi, you have Waka, you have Yama, you have Rara, you have Guy, and that's just to name a few, and most of them are fairly young. Like, Luigi is definitely a character I could see going a lot higher. Sonic will go higher, that is a guarantee. Lucina kind of as well, basically just if Proto Bonham starts playing the character again, or he just starts going to stuff again, you're definitely going to see Lucina have a rise, though she is a character that it doesn't need to necessarily rely on Proto Bonham, even though we don't have as many top Lucina reps right now. Mr. E is still really good, he could win some events. There are other good ones, Leon from Europe as well, so Lucina is still a good enough character that she doesn't need one specific player to carry her. But speaking of that, we got Byleth, and Leo isn't the only person to ever get results with Byleth. There's good Byleth. I think the second best one would probably be Riziasu, but with Leo pretty much dropping the character for solo ages, at least that's what I think is going to happen. And Riziasu, I haven't been seeing him play as much Byleth. It's not looking great for the character. Again, other Byleth players do exist, they always will, but they're not reaching the same levels right now that Leo and Riziasu were reaching. Mainly Leo, of course, but if Leo fully abandons the character, then it's not going to be great for the Byleth mains. And speaking of abandoning the character, you got the one that he's abandoning it for in Aegis. This character will most certainly go up. ZSS, I don't know if ZSS is going to go up, because there's a lot of ZSS players that show a ton of promise. I think Shu is really talented. There's a couple ones in Japan that are still good, but your main condition is going to be Mars. He's the player that is consistently getting those bigger wins when he does go to stuff. So if Mars starts taking the game super seriously again, starts traveling, you're going to see Zero Suit results go super up. If you don't have that happening, then she's probably going to stay in a similar level, but again, there are a couple ZSS players that could definitely make it to the top. You have Olimar as well, kind of the same thing. A lot of the top Olimar mains are starting to drop the character, so you probably won't see them having as much success. And then you have Ness. I think Ness, there are so many amazing reps that I would honestly be pretty shocked if he didn't kick up a couple more wins. And we're finally at our top 10, the best characters throughout the history of Smash Ultimate. And what I mean by top 10 is top 12, because you have Peach, Fox, and Game & Watch all at that number 10 spot, and all of these characters are going to go up. Mudace is going to continue win events. You also have other players that are good, like Umeki and Ling, for example. Light's going to continue win events. You also have Kananabe and Passeriman and some other players. Game & Watch, though, he's my pick to go up the most, because you have Mia, Meister, Monty, the three big M's, and some other players that are still doing well with the character, but the main focus there is Mia, because while I still think that Light can win a bunch of events, and he still win events, and Mudace, even though he hasn't won some big majors, he's been winning a bunch of regionals as well. The characters are obviously still getting representation, but Mia has just been farming events. Like, he wins so many things. He's been playing this game for a year, maybe a bit more, super competitively, and the amount of wins he's already racked up is insane. I think towards the later end of the Smash Ultimate, Mia could be a player that's already the best player in the world, or someone that's in contention contention for the best player in the world if he isn't right now, because again, Mia just wins stuff. So I think of any characters to increase from those three, Game & Watch is definitely going to be the one that goes up by the most. You also have Young Link being a character that's above all three of those, and it makes a lot of sense because Young Link is broken. We've seen this character have success throughout the entirety of the game, just like not winning any super majors or majors, but Young Link farms regionals. Like, it's actually insane how well this character does at regionals from like 50 different people. Like, most recently you have Kobe winning Cirque du CFL. So Young Link is a character that I think will continually go up because he just seems to just destroy everyone at regional events. At number 8, you're going to have Snake, and Snake is a character that is probably going to continue going up. He's been successful throughout the entire history of Ultimate, and the amount of reps that you have for him right now, I'm not even going to bother starting to list them off because there's so many that could win these regional or bigger events. So Snake, that's a character that's going to continue having success. You also have Roy and Rob tied at that 6th spot, and this, again, makes sense. I think Roy's having a little bit less success. It feels like right after quarantine, Roy was farming everybody, but he hasn't been doing as well as of late, though you're still having good results from Roy. You know, Alice is doing good sometimes, Cola still does well, Goblin still does well, Munikin has results when he goes to things. There is a lot of Roy players out there that are still causing damage. Hikaru, if he decides to continue playing the character, but he might be shifting more to that, you know, Donkey Kong / Sora playstyle. So hopefully for Roy results, they don't happen, but hey, Donkey Kong and Sora, they kind of need the representation, so we'll let it slide. And then you have Rob as well. Rob, I mean, Rob's definitely a character that blew up in the post-quarantine era, though he did have success in pre-quarantine. You know, Zachary's Rob went pretty crazy, and there's a bunch of Robs towards the start of the game. You have Anathema, Zomba, Big Boss, MK Big Boss, sorry, and Yoko, and so many more Rob players that are just insane. So I think Rob stocks are definitely going to go up. And now you have your top 5. Starting off with Wolf. Wolf's been a character, again, relevant throughout the entire history of Smash. He's just been so good throughout the history of the game. You had people pick him up right at the start, kind of drop him. You had some new Wolf players rise, Wolf players fall. Like, I feel like Wolf, you could literally make an entire documentary about just who the best Wolf player in the world is right now, because it's been like 10 different people. They've all had immense success with the character, so he makes a lot of sense. Wario as well, and number 2. Tied for number 2, you have Steve, Joker, and Wario. Wario, that character before patch was broken. Wario was ridiculous. Everyone in Japan had a secondary Wario, and you're definitely seeing essentially just Gluttony having success with the character, though there are other ones. I think probably most notably you have Loaf, who still does fairly well with the character. Sorry for the cut. Huto was the other Wario that I was thinking about. He was on the tip of my tongue, and I couldn't not say his name because he is a ridiculous player, but also he's been secondary in Captain Falcon and K. Rool as well. But you know what? When you're that good, you can do whatever you want. So Wario's a character. I think we'll see him having more success. Definitely not as much success as he was having towards the start of the game, but we'll still see some more wins from him. Then you have Steve. Steve is obviously going to go up. He's the only character that's going to be DLC Pack 2 that is this much higher. Like, even if you look down here, Aegis is pretty low for how good they are. Min Min and Kazuya are really low for how good they are. But Steve, you have so many results because you have so many Steve players having success. He's the best character of the game, so makes a ton of sense. Joker, I mean, MK Leo pre-quarantine, that's all I really have to say about that. But our number 1 character, by a lot, by the way, by 9 tournaments, is going to be Palutena. And again, I've said this like 30 times, but this makes a lot of sense. This character has been relevant throughout the entire of this game, and it's been done by a lot of people. But I don't think this trend is going to continue. As we've seen recently, Palutena has started to fall off a little bit, but you know what? There are still Palutena players making work. Jigaimo, most notably, is doing really well in Japan right now, probably the best he's ever done, so he might be the last bastion for the character, but Luis still exists, Chag still exists. You have Raffalo, who's still really good. Chase is on the up and up, so Palutena is a character I think will continue seeing success, but you definitely have most of the results from the pre-quarantine era of the game. But again, it's fairly interesting that Palutena is so clearly the best character in the game. Like, you look at this, it is 4.05, but you look at the results, 5.51 for Palutena. So undisputed, she's not only better than Incineroar, but she is better than everyone. And here we have the early meta comparison to the late meta comparison, and we're not going to be going over everything in super detail because that would just take way too long. But again, I highly implore that you check this out because it is really cool. Easy Freezy stuff will be down below. I do want to mention 5 characters though that I was a little bit surprised by. The first one is going to be Pichu, who actually has 2 wins in the early meta and 2 wins in the late meta. I thought Pichu would fall off super hard, but apparently not. Pichu players are still doing well. Again, I still don't think he's going to go up necessarily, but even in the post-quarantine era, you're still having the character have a little bit of success. And the biggest shock for me, probably of this entire list, is the fact that Ice Climbers doesn't have a single big win in the 2021 to 2022 area all 4 of the wins actually came from 2019 to 2020, which is crazy to me because Ice Climbers right now, we're going through a renaissance. Big D is a top 20 player in the world. There's a bunch of good ones in Japan, so I think Ice Climbers is still going to get more wins, but it's just a little surprising that all their stuff came from the early meta because that's when people thought Ice Climbers was trash. Now we know the character is actually pretty decent. Palutena, as well, as you can see, top 3 in the 2019-2022 era, but she has way more wins in 2021 to 2022, and that's probably just because we have, more tournaments that have happened in this time. At least I think that we have, but Palutena, it's a lot more than that. That was obviously right towards the start because you had Luis and Chag farming people like they were doing super well as a bunch of other Palutena players still having success throughout it, but that shocked me a little bit, as well as Crom. Same thing. Crom didn't do even amazing when he was ridiculous. He only has 2 wins, but later on he has 4 wins. So shouts to Crom players. They're still making it work. And then you have Roy, and this one doesn't really surprise me, but I just kind of want to show the contrast. He goes from 3 wins in the early meta to 17 wins being a top 3 character, which is pretty ridiculous. I'll probably just cut this in whenever, but I also wanted to mention that Inkling have a big drop off, but we kind of knew about that. But Sonic also had a massive rise. I think the biggest rises were either by Roy, Sonic, or Samus, because Samus also went really big. As you can see, Samus has 0 wins, and she goes all the way up to 11. Sonic, I think, only has 2 wins. Yeah, Sonic at 2, and he goes up to 13. Inkling has 11 wins, or rather 10 wins, and then goes down to 3. So that character fell off, but Sonic and Samus, those are characters that we're seeing dominating the meta right now, but towards the start of the game, they weren't very good, but just thought I should add that. And again, the most drastic ones are obviously going to be the DLCs because they didn't exist, but those are some of the biggest changes, and I thank you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed. This is such a cool list. Again, I've said it 30 times, but I'm going to say it again. Huge shouts to EAZYFREEZIE. This is amazing. Please check him out. His stuff is down below. Really fun video, and if you guys liked it, be sure to sub. All that yada yada sports been absolutely unreal lately, and I'll see you all in the next one. Bye-bye.